So you are Ivy, correct?
Ivory, sir.
I'm no stranger to the world of Minecraft roleplay or indie series, and it is not unknown that the latter has gained incredible popularity in recent years. And yet, despite me having watched most of the big indie TV shows available on YouTube today, nothing has come close to the quality and consistency White Pine has. So what is a White Pine? Well, White Pine is a Minecraft roleplay/murder mystery with a young female maid, Ivory, as the protagonist. The story takes place in a 1950s-ish setting, and Ivory finds herself working on a new job for the upper-class Hemlock family at their estate, White Pine. In my opinion, the show is filled with a beauty that I haven't seen done in Minecraft before, and it touches on very important subjects and representation, but that's just the surface. If you take a closer look at the other story this show is trying to convey, I believe you'll find that White Pine really is not only a tragedy, but also the tale of a failing system. Let's get into it. First, a side note. Despite the disclaimer saying that there are going to be spoilers, and there will be, I want to keep things vague for this section. The reason being is that I just described White Pine as a tragedy, but that's a prediction based on the plot and many specific details, which contradicts with my desire to avoid general spoilers. Because of this, I am going to have a separate short video that should be out soon that delves into my theories and is very analytical of what we can infer per scene. Side note over. Let's take a look at White Pine's setting. A 1950s English or American urban city known as Emberton is located close to a large Hemlock family-owned estate known as White Pine. Things work swimmingly in White Pine. The maids and butlers get along, the Hemlocks are generally kind people, and at a glance it doesn't seem like anyone dislikes one another or has any form of conflict. Things are beautiful, simple, stable, until they aren't.
Got it!
Everything's under control. Don't touch it. Get back.
It's okay. Get away. Get the hell away. Don't get any closer, everyone.
It's okay.
Try.
It's
It's
gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Get away. Get the hell away.
Hey, Ash, get Mr. Hemlock. Guys, don't touch it. Get back.
When Cat, one of the maids, is found dead, the entirety of White Pine goes into turmoil, and the series turns into a murder mystery that focuses mainly on the way the disruption affects the lives and mental health of the White Pine residents. You would think that in a murder mystery the murder is the main focus, but so far there's been more focus on the funeral and the grieving, rather than the identification of the killer. And this is arguably the most important factor of White Pine's premise. The murder mystery isn't per se the endgame of the series, but the catalyst to focus on the state of its community. And that focus on community leads us to the wonderful contrast of White Pine. You see, White Pine is beautiful. So beautiful that a large portion of the shots and scenes are purely cinematic, and I'll touch on that later. But as it is beautiful, it is also dreadful. White Pine is dreadful because you're sharing the perspective of a new maid who's struggling to find a comfortable place in her surroundings. She starts to draw the attention of good friends, but also the attention of the detectives who investigate the murder. White Pine is dreadful because something went wrong, and you don't know what will happen next, or if things are going to get better. It is dreadful because as the series progresses, we see more and more characters struggle in the estate. It is dreadful because the same camera angles that are used to create beauty can create eeriness, and most importantly, White Pine is as dreadful as it is beautiful, because the realization of what is likely to come slowly dawns on you the more you think. So in order to avoid spoilers for newcomers, that's how I think White Pine will end. The result of dread wounding beauty and stability will, inevitably, result in tragedy. Spoilers will now be more specific. I do genuinely believe that White Pine is really well written and really unique, but why is that? The answer is silence. Silence is what sets White Pine aside from other shows I've watched. There are minute-long shots placed throughout the show where the viewer is just meant to admire the scenery, and scenes of multiple minutes of characters walking that contain no dialogue but are just pure cinematography. I want to explore 3 examples to show you what I mean. Our first example has silence manifesting through Ivory, our main character. She's an introvert and incredibly likely neurodivergent, which results in her keeping quiet for the majority of her conversations and interactions. Keep this in mind. When the estate is about to leave for Mr. Cat's funeral, Ivory tends to a certain Duke Zolister that just arrived the day prior. After delivering some tea, Ivory asks whether or not Zollister will be attending the funeral. He responds with no, and explains how he can't stand going into cathedrals, which, as the conversation continues, is accompanied by him mentioning how his parents were Christian, and that he isn't quite religious himself. Ivory gave simple responses throughout the conversation, and asked some questions. This is a clear representation of religious trauma, and I think it's actually a very unique way to portray trauma in media. Think about it. When Zollister speaks, he's extroverted, confident, and overall a very joyous person to be around. Just taking this into consideration, you wouldn't think he's the type of person to struggle mentally, or at least it isn't your first impression of him. This is due to many of us, when thinking of traumatized people, typically thinking of something much more visible rather than something masked. And yet, Zollister directly states that he is practically physically unable to step into cathedrals, which is undeniably a result of religious trauma. His charisma is also very misleading in the sense that it seems like he can easily open up about his trauma, while in reality he's being very vague with his details. He's not really opening up at all, it's all breadcrumbs. In this scenario, silence is seen as Ivory keeps her words to a minimum, meaning the conversation is really just Zollister having an ear to talk to. This does two things. Not only do I think that Zollister wouldn't have revealed so much about himself so easily if he was talking to an extrovert, Ivory's silence allows the audience to become her in a sense. She becomes a tool of interpretation, and, for a moment, it is really as if we are the ones listening to Zollister. We interpret his story in our own way, and I personally think that this serves to be an incredibly immersive viewing experience as a result. Pyrocyph is the eldest son of a Hemlock family, and in this introductory scene we get to see his morning routine. He wakes up, goes into the bathroom to throw up, and then comes out, dressed, and stares out the window. The scene is about a minute long and not a single word of dialogue is spoken. My first takeaway from this was the obvious: this guy probably has an eating disorder. My second takeaway was that I was incredibly impressed with how the scene played out. I think it's because silence works so well here. It allowed us to truly get the best first impression of Pyrocyph as a character. The lack of dialogue or noise leaves us with our own thoughts and observations, and it makes the scene where he throws up behind the closed door really raw. We, the audience, had no idea what to expect, and the silence continued that ignorance, which in my opinion allowed the implications of an eating disorder to add more depth to Pyro's character than it otherwise would have with some form of other noise or dialogue. My third example is actually a scene where silence gets used in a way where it really isn't plot relevant, but nevertheless really well done and kind of anxiety inducing. Before the funeral, Soraptor tries to find his missing star pin for a suit, and we are then forced to watch a grueling, more than minute-long scene where Soraptor walks almost aimlessly through the halls, trying to find a star until he locates it behind a staircase, which the camera lingers on for an awful long time. Once again, not a word was uttered. I cannot overstate how uncomfortable the scene made me feel. I was anxious and scared the entire time, and judging by the chat's reactions during the premiere, I wasn't alone in that. The silence created so much tension, and it is honestly just really impressive. The point is, White Pine has a narrative device, silence, so well done that it makes the show truly one of a kind. There is nothing else like it. Next to silence, one of my biggest praises of White Pine is representation, and no other character besides Ivory is the best person to talk about for this discussion. Ivory is nearly perfectly written, and as we discuss her, I'm either going to assume that you are, someone who hasn't watched White Pine, in which case I hope you enjoy my rant, or someone who has watched White Pine, in which case I want to hear your opinion down in the comments. So what do we know about Ivory? At the start of the show, the only information we get is that her contractor found her in a town nearby Emberton, Gristle. We don't know her past or if she has any living relatives. Besides that, Ivory is quiet and quite introverted, with a stutter in new social situations or under pressure. She dissociates often, and more times than not needs direct orders in order to complete daily tasks, frequently taking things too literally to the point where she didn't eat lunch one time because she followed an order too literally. She also sometimes throws up her food, which actually led to a really nice conversation with Pyrocyph. She clearly can get anxious quickly and doesn't understand a lot of societal speaking norms, or norms in general, but she is also a kind-hearted person. She loves to play piano and has a peculiar connection to the outdoors, specifically the woods. But maybe it isn't so peculiar after all. A lot of the things, but not all, such as the lack of family and possible eating disorder, that I just mentioned are signs of neurodivergence, as they all align with or practically are forms of difficulty with social interaction, communication, executive functioning, emotional dysregulation, and learning differences. Basically, I'm saying that Ivory is neurodivergent. This isn't just a theory either, it's practically all but confirmed, and many comments on the White Pine videos have echoed this point similarly or exactly. It's honestly just really wholesome to see how many people have shared their stories and relate to Ivory as a character. That's what makes her character so good. Her quietness and tendencies allow a large variety of people to interpret her and relate to her in their own way, and it honestly makes her a really human main character. Unfortunately, her neurodivergence also means she is a natural societal outcast, as many neurodivergent people are. Nowadays, the world is starting to become slightly more understanding towards neurodivergent people in a neurotypical world, but this show doesn't take place in nowadays. This means Ivory is very much a fish out of water, a fish that just so happens to be in the same room where a murder just happened. Earlier I mentioned that White Pine will result in tragedy, and I believe that, but I won't say much more because it starts to get to more theorizing, which I want to do in a separate video which should be up. After giving you guys that little teaser, let's look back at another quality of White Pine. Another reason why I enjoy the show so much is its looks. Nothing in Minecraft storytelling has been produced before to this scale, and every camera angle, build, or music piece is genuinely so interesting. Every shot is so beautiful, and the lighting and editing is really well done. Another positive is that White Pine has pretty much monthly releases, which in the indie world is really impressive. Of course I know animation takes much longer, and I'm not trying to discredit the upload schedule of other shows, but having near monthly releases was nonetheless a pleasant surprise. Ivory, the human being I mean, also produces all of the music and edits all of the episodes herself as far as I'm aware, which makes this project all the more impressive. I still have to be fair with my critiques though, but I really don't have that many. The show's only real flaw is that referring to each character in the show as their YouTuber name or username really takes away a lot of the immersion in some instances. I would also argue that there was a little bit of rust in the voice acting at the start of the pilot, but that has now been shaken off to the point where the voice acting is good if not great. On top of that, due to the show's nature of silence and long shots, the pacing also does feel a bit slow at the start, but the viewer definitely adjusted that down the line. Speaking of lines, we are nearing the end of ours, so it's time for some final thoughts and appreciation. Of course, kudos to Ivory and everyone else involved for creating something so amazing. White Pine is truly such a breath of fresh air. I urge everyone who can to donate to Ivory's Ko-Fi, which should be linked down below. It helps keep the show going. And once again, all credit of music and clips in this video goes to Ivory. This is my first video essay by the way, so if anyone has any feedback or tips or wants to show support through liking or subscribing, I would greatly appreciate it. That is all. Ta-ta now. I hope you enjoyed.